It is November 23rd, 2007. And who are you?
I'm Lola Stone.
Pleased to meet you. I am your son, Dennis Stone. Pleasure. And where are we?
We're sitting on my lanai, Montego Cove apartment, condo, overlooking a little lake.
What part of the world are we in?
Good question. A remote corner called Stewart, Florida.
Stewart, Florida. And it would be a good idea to capture a little history, little lessons learned, perspectives on life.
Ask, and I'll try to answer.
And this is a life of, so far, how many years duration?
Oh, God. Must I? 90 years.
And do you recall your last birthday?
Do I ever? The surprise of my life. Family came from all over, even our Thai family. 6 states I counted. From 6 states and as far away as halfway around the world. Who else could have a birthday like that?
So that's not something you do every year?
No, if I'm weeping, it's because I'm fighting off a cold. My eye is dripping. No, I don't want a birthday like that again. Once in a lifetime.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see. Who were, I guess as you look back on these 90 years, who were your most important teachers?
Well,
Whether in school or out?
Okay. In school, my first grade teacher, Miss Love. I loved her. But I did a naughty thing one day. I went with a friend, and we didn't have any money. We went to the candy store at the corner, and she said, take a piece of gum. There was loose pieces of gum. I did it. And did I learn a lesson? I'm chewing gum, going into my first grade. Miss Love catches me, and she makes me throw out that gum and go in the corner. And I knew from that point on that was because I had taken the gum without paying that 1 penny. Oh, so from then on, I never took anything in my life again that he shouldn't have had. And other teachers, let's see. Oh, in college, of course, the president of Hunter College was George N. Schuster. He was even at the Nuremberg trials, a very important man, wonderful person. He was a great influence. I took courses with him, but he was an inspiration. And even saw him in Hawaii. He came. I met him at the plane with a leg. Out of Subit. Oh God. Yeah, there was a man named Dr. Herbst who was very influential when I was about 21, 22. I met at the museum. And then Antoinette K. Gordon, one of my best teachers with whom I worked, the Tibetan curator, the Tibetan expert.
At which museum?
Antoinette K. Gordon.
At which museum?
American Museum, Natural History in New York. And she was a world-famous expert on Tibet. And she introduced me to Wagner's music, to so much other music, to good literature, to the whole world of Asia. And it was like falling off a cliff. I fell in love with that and Asia and everything. Oddly enough, she said she had a son, and she expected to have another child, hoping it was a daughter, whom she would call Lola, and who would have been born exactly about the time I was born. But these strange things happened to me all my life, and that was right a year or so after my mother died that I met her, and she was like a great mentor, almost mother figure to me. I was very fortunate. Through her I met Alva Dennison, that wonderful composer and all-around wonderful woman who could do anything, beautiful art, music, any creative activity. So she was another inspiration. And then, of course, Bapa in Subit, for whom I looked for 20 years. He called himself an ordinary man, but when you saw him with that radiant smile and looking like 1/4 his age, and his sense of humor and his practicality, I mean, He was the greatest inspiration, I guess, of all. My mother, of course, was inspiration, but she died before I could really appreciate her.
How old were you when she died?
22. My mother influenced me in so many ways. Of course, she was a darling. She'd make me these beautiful clothes that I would design. So I was wearing exotic clothes. I had always had lovely clothes. Of course, it was after the Depression and nobody had much money, but I was always beautifully dressed. It seemed very important to me. I always loved fashion. Anyway, my mother gave me my first oil painting set when I was 14. I made my first oil painting of a Hawaiian girl with a flower behind her ear. Very odd. And then she would write poetry, she would play beautiful music. Also all that inspired me. I wrote my first poem when I was 14, a long one about the sea. Still have it. And I've been painting on and off all my life and writing one way or other, poetry or other things. So that was her influence, always in the arts, and she was just soft and sweet and patient, too patient, I guess. So I was very overcome with terrible sorrow for 7 years after she suddenly went. But other influences, sure, my husband Bob, the symbol of patience. 20 years, he waited for me. Oh, well, finally, he caught me. So he was, of course, a great influence on my life in so many ways. He was the balance. We were very different, but we helped each other do whatever projects the other one was involved with. I always had projects. He always had projects. We had children as a project. And I suppose we're influenced by our children, too. That changes you, makes you grow up and think differently.
You had some musical talent from your father, but he was not as big an influence, though, huh?
Yeah, my father was very artistic and musical, too. And I learned great music from him because he couldn't stand Cole Porter and all that music I used to listen to. So he gave me his old Victrola.
All that kid stuff.
Yeah, with all his records, his old Caruso, all the famous singers of that day. I hear the voice of a bird. Anyway, so I had exposed to good music. And then when I was 14, I started listening to Hawaii Calls. In those days, it was more static than music, but I loved it. I never dreamt of going to Hawaii till later on, but somehow, something in me always responded to the islands.
But you've always been a citizen of the planet, always multicultural, international.
Since I was 7 or 8, I used to have the concept of one Earth, one family, and one God. And now at the end of my life, I have the same concept, only I've lived it. I've been everywhere, and I know they're all part of my family. Doesn't matter their color, their creed, anything about them. I felt at home. Yeah, I think, in fact, one of my teachers who was an influence in college said to me, "You're a world soul." That was English composition. I don't know what I wrote in English composition to give him that. But when I was in grade school, all my compositions were about trips to Mars and space and all kinds of things like that. That was my passion. Dreaming, and yet dreams came true. In fact, I think I must have lived other lives. There's too much that I found familiar. Like people I met, places I've been.
And strangers will come up to you and say things,
Oh
right?
yeah, people. But that's only a lot of years. But Not when I was so young and beautiful. But,
But now they come up to you and say how beautiful you look.
yeah, so now I get compliments from strange men in public, buying food of all places, women. Well, I think I make an effort to dress differently in my own way, and people kind of admire that. But I think it's Subin, the influence of Subin, that they know there's something different about me, and maybe they need it or want it, but they can't comprehend what it is. It happens almost every day. So I know it's not in me. I don't take it as a compliment. It's something else. I'm grateful for it. And what else would you like to know?
And you've taken on some projects to help him
Oh,
to
God.
enhance peace in the world and
Oh,
international understanding.
Oh, right. There was a period in my life in the early 60s when inwardly I felt I had to get rid of all the things I was doing. So I stopped. I listened to my inner. I stopped. Got rid of doing this, that, and the other thing. And then on New Year's morning, 1965, I grabbed a piece of long yellow paper that Bob would always write all his books on, and a pen, and start like it was dictating. Fashions for Peace. A way of bridging friendship, creating friendship among people everywhere through the field of fashion. And the whole thing, how to do it, contact UN ambassadors, making contacts, gathering costumes from around the world. Who was going to be my helpers? My friends, of course. I pulled them all in. Well, in 9 months, like a baby being born, we produced the first pageant at the New York World's
Fair.
Fair in 1965 at the 2 pavilions, and one of them was under auspices of the Chamber of Commerce, and the other was the fair people themselves. And so from then on we went invited to expos all over Montreal and British Airways took it as a promotional thing, and Alitalia Airlines. We never did it for money, it was all non-profit. A lot of work, and we had gorgeous costumes sent from all over the world. Even the Queen of Sea Kim sent a costume, and that was through connections. I knew her godmother in Huntington, Long Island. She was an American.
Well, you've had many interesting connections. What are some of your most enjoyable connections you've made?
That's a hard one to answer because I've met so many fascinating people and have been exposed to so much. It's incomprehensible to me how it. The world seemed to come to us. The first Russian troupe of artists, filmmakers, poets went to Hollywood, went here. They came to Huntington, Long Island, where we were living. How? Oh, I don't know. We had connections through Arms for Friendship and People to People. And we always had, I think Dennis was a little kid. We opened the door and it was a little green man, said, "I'm from the planet." Uh-oh. He said, "Oh, come in." My parents are waiting for you.
I think I saw him in the guest book. He's
You saw him.
from 58 or something, yeah. Planet
One.
Yeah, I remember the guy from with the green horns.
No.
Yeah.
Is it on now? Anyway, no. There was Vishnu Devananda, who came as an innocent little student of yogi. He had written a book, and then he eventually became a very famous guru, and he became fat and prosperous and kind of too westernized. He became, I think he was up in Canada, had lots of followers. But anyway, the Russians that came, one was a poet, a poetess. She was so famous, her name was something Bardo. She said, "Do American children read my poetry?" The Russian children read American poetry, but I don't think American kids read Russian
As we look
poetry.
through your guest book, every country, I mean, from Pakistan and I mean, some of the Thailand and Cambodia and all
Right.
over the world came to this
Oh.
little hillside in Huntington, New York.
I don't know what it is. I guess it's because I was a world soul and I don't know. Leave it to the hands of the gods. They figured it out.
And in what, 1958, you decided to end
Oh,
the Cold War.
oh yeah. Because I had the Russian woman. A Russian woman wrote to the American women, and it was published in the New York Times on the front page on a Sunday. And little Dennis, 2-year-old, was scribbling on it with yellow crayon, and I see it. I grabbed it from him and let him mess up the rest of the Times. It said, "Oh my gosh," she writes a letter asking American women to help the Russian women create peace the way we worked together in the war. Oh, I'm the one to answer it, I say. Run upstairs, and like a letter dictated pours out through me, and somebody says, "Send a copy to Pravda in Leningrad," which I did. They published it. She eventually answered me. What I hadn't realized, she got 100 American women answered her, including Eleanor Roosevelt.
And you spoke to Eleanor later about this lady by
Eleanor
phone.
Roosevelt once wrote a column about her in the New York, I think it was the Globe, My Day. She read a column once a week, and she wrote up a Nadezhda. So I called her, and we chatted about my Russian friend. Okay, so how did I go on this peace mission to stop atomic
War. Bombs.
the use of atomic testing at that
Oh.
point. So this was sponsored by the Quakers, the American Friends Committee, and because I knew the Ingersoll, and John Ingersoll was a very active Quaker, he told them I had a Russian connection, and they thought, that's great. So I went to represent the women of America with 3 other men, 2 of them Quakers, ministers, one of them the famous Bayard Rustin, who led the march, the black man who led the march on Washington years later, and one of them was a businessman. The other was just a Quaker minister. And we went, and it was to all the capitals of Europe, only they wouldn't let us in the Soviet Union. So we got as far as Helsinki, spent 16 days there trying to get the Soviet embassy. They had promised us visas would be waiting. Well, finally the consul said, in my opinion, you may as well go home. You're not going to get them.
But you always took on those challenges,
Yeah,
no matter how unlikely, because they were important to you.
yeah. I mean, I was always interested in peace. After all, anybody who was born, war started after I was born, and ever since I've lived, there's been wars and rumors of wars. Of course I'm for peace. Wars get nowhere. They never solved a problem, never will. So, now, what next?
What next? Well, what are some of the big lessons life,
Oh,
these last 90 years,
oh.
the first 90 years have taught you?
Well, one has to learn, which was very hard. Being a very willful person, I had to learn to give up my will and flow with the flow. When the stream is going down, I used to try to swim up. Now I finally learned you go with the flow, and things will work out better. And I've always followed hunches, but more and more my hunches and gut feelings are stronger and stronger, so there's no way I can say no to them. So feel like I am led where I need to be, meet people that I need to learn from, or they need to learn from me, and that it's all the way it should be. So whatever comes, I've learned to, okay, I accept it. No matter what it is, there's nothing more I can do about it, so I let go. So that was an important lesson. And what else did you ask?
What other lessons has life taught you?
I mean, how can one, off the top of your head, tell you what lessons you've learned? Well, how to be more loving. Oh, my major lesson for this life, I know, I've always known, was compassion. Feeling with others. And I think I've learned that. And my second lesson, which I'm still learning, is patience. So those are my major life lessons that I know still need to learn more patience.
How about some favorite proverbs or lines from poetry you think have guided you?
That's kind of hard. I mean, I love them from people like Albert Einstein and Hindus, pardon me, the Chinese, from wherever I can learn. I'm open to it all. After all, I live in one world.
And you speak how many languages, partially?
Well, I studied 10 languages.
10, wow.
Never made an error in spelling, only in one, English. Impossible to spell. To this day, I have to be corrected. I have to look them up in the dictionary. How do I spell?
If you could give people one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think go with the flow. Like the bard had Hamlet say, there's a destiny shapes our ends, rough hew them how we may. But why go through all the torture to ourselves and the problems and the bad health by forcing our will? Why don't we let this destiny guide us? It's in us, only we don't listen. Like the Buddha says, you already are the Buddha. We search out there for the answers that are here. The bluebird of happiness. Where do the children find it? In their own backyard. After they travel looking for that bluebird, they come home exhausted, sit in their garden, and there's the sound of the bluebird. So what's the moral there? The answer is always closer than you think, probably within you.
I think that was a message in The Wizard of Oz, too, by the way.
That's why it's so popular. Eternally popular. Seeing the world through green-colored glasses, emerald glasses.
And you were in the entertainment business, at least as a model, and
oh God, yeah.
met many of the famous entertainers of our time.
Well, but all my life I kept seeing famous people and meeting them.
But you were a model.
So I was a model, and the reason was I worked for Gloria Vanderbilt in my first job when I was 17, graduated high school. I didn't want to go to college. I wasn't ready. I wanted to see the world. So I got a job at Gloria Vanderbilt's dress shop and wore these glamorous clothes for Mrs. Bob Hope and the famous movie actresses that would come, and her sister would come from England. Her Gloria's twin sister, Lady Furness, would come wearing famous black pearls, and they would serve champagne, not to the two models, to the guests. And that was a lot of fun. And then I'd go out. I always had glamorous dates. I always had glamorous dates that would take me to El Morocco and Rainbow Room.
And you saw the big bands?
The 21.
The big bands were playing?
Oh, God.
Dorsey?
And what?
Tommy Dorsey, didn't you see him?
Oh, God, there were famous people all over the place. My favorite actor I met in El Morocco, John Bowles. He played the Sheik of Araby or something, Sheikh. And
What made you decide to go back to college, and at what age?
Well, anyway, so I was only a model because I wanted to be a designer. When I finally had the chance to get to 7th Avenue, I couldn't stand the commercialism of it.
7th Avenue is where all the
The
boutique.
rag business.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 7th Avenue.
The rag business.
The rag business. And then I saw how commercial and how penny pinching and how it wasn't just designing beautiful clothes. So that turned me off, though I did take courses in pattern making and all that. I just was taking courses at Columbia University on weekends. I always kept my hands in education, my ears in education, my head in education. Anyway, I took weekend courses at Columbia University. What else? So what made me change? Well, I got married at 21. And so 22, my mother died. And then I taught myself typing. Oh, I went to Hunter College just to a lecture. And it was a lecture by William Dean Howell, who became very famous. He went on to Harvard after that. He was a marvelous teacher. When I heard him talk on anthropology, I said, "Oh my God, is this what education's about? I got to go matriculate." I had to go back to Far Rockaway High School, take intermediate algebra or something to get in, and just managed to pass it with a passing grade because I had all A's except mathematics. Arithmetic was my nemesis.
At age 23, you went back
22.
to 22 to high school.
Yeah, they gave me permission for one course so I could get into Hunter College. And Hunter College in those days, today you have to pay to get in. Those days you had to have high scholastic. You were competition with all of New York City. So I could get in, except for my arithmetic, my math, my teacher. So
But you got in.
So what did I have to take when I got in? A course in trig, calculus, and analytics. But I had such a great teacher that I came out with a B+. Now she didn't know I forgot how to add, to subtract, multiply. She didn't know that because we were on another level. I got it through osmosis. I really did. But so that's one thing I can tell any young people: when you go to college, after you take required courses, go for the most popular teacher, even if he teaches how to clean toilets or something.
Atomic physics or whatever.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because they can inspire you, like this mathematic teacher who loved her work so she just inspired this dud. Anyway, so while I was there, I took a course in Hindi. It was called Hindustani in those days. They were experimenting with the soldiers. This is now during the war. And they were going to teach the soldiers how to, you had a teacher who did the grammar, and you had a teacher who did a native who would teach you. You could only talk to the native and speak Hindi. So we learned the Arabic script in those days. Today it's back to the Sanskrit script. Okay, at the same time, I got permission to go to graduate school at Columbia University at the graduate level to study Sanskrit. I think they let me in because there were so few students, they were delighted to have someone else. And because I had, in my teens, I was looking for a reconnection with what I had lost when I came into this life. And so I sat at the feet of every Swami yogi that came to New York. And then I heard at the Vivekananda Center, they read the Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit. I said, "Oh, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever heard. I've got to learn the language." Sure enough, I did. And I read the Bhagavad Gita, a couple of chapters in Sanskrit, read lots of literature. 3 years of Sanskrit. I was reading a lot of stuff. So, finally, and I got an MA on my to do this Iranian Institute School for Asiatic Studies. I got a scholarship, took courses. By the time I finished, I couldn't write the thesis. I had overeducated up to here. And what I wanted was a different kind of MA. I wanted a child. By then I was in my late 20s. So, voila, daughter Lynn, P.S. 1947. And by that time, I was so overeducated, I couldn't read a book, it seemed like, for 10 years. Couldn't read. Too stuffed. Don't overeducate yourself. So, of course, that changed my life. A child always does. But then my life started to crumble, fall apart, and
What happened?
I picked him to escape my father, who was so rigid. I picked a man just as rigid. And so, once he got married, he said, "Oh, now that's settled. I can devote myself to my work." So weekends, he'd go up to RCA lab with his other workers and his colleagues, and they would work on all their own projects. And I'd go walking with my girlfriends the way I had before I got married. And then I eventually realized this is not a marriage. I wanted companionship, love, more than that. So, went through a lot of personal stuff, which we won't go into. And always there was Bob in the background. I'd get a phone call, pick up the phone, nobody was there. I'd say hello. It was Bob, I found out later, who was keeping tracks. Was they still living in that same place? So we were living in Manhattan then, in the 19th floor, down in Chelsea. What else? Eventually I settled down, stopped whirling around, going through this dark night of the soul year after year. 3.5 years. I was very slow in learning. And finally woke up, oh, this is the right one for me. So there was fire sign, water sign, Aries and Pisces meeting. Now one could put the other out, or you could make steam. We made steam. And then along comes Dennis. And that was fun, because he was smiling from the day he was born. Oh no, I can't say that, because Lynn smiled when she was born. And she had long red hair, and she was very pretty. Always pretty. Pretty, pretty. Only she had problems, what do you call it when babies? Colic. And I think part of that, I must say, was because I was emotionally in an unstable kind of state. I think that might have helped. Not helped.
Contributed.
It contributed to it. So I apologize, Lynn. But I think we all get the lessons we need to learn. That's the one thing I'd like to pass on. Life has a way of bringing us what we need to know. We need to learn. And if anyone steps in the way, they'll get it. But we won't get it. And if we don't get our lessons now, I'm afraid, since I believe in reincarnation, you'd come back and learn the same lesson over again till you get it. And then we can be free to go on to whatever else is there in this vast universe with endless dimensions and endless galaxies, endless space. So we are here, I feel, in a form of purgatory. If you don't go through something at this moment difficult, somebody else close to you will, some friends, some family. Everyone has to be put through. Because we don't learn lovingly, easily, like a flower unfolding. No, we have to all learn the hard way. It's sad. But this is the world of hard knocks. And we got to get through it. Once we do, we'll be prepared for whatever comes next. So that's my basic idea in life.
What are your predictions for the future of the world?
Oh, God.
Good or bad?
Well, I feel this world, like Papa has told us, is the planet of material forces. And I think very powerful material forces. And I think we have, certainly in this age in America and the Western world, we've fallen under the power of the material universe. We forget, like Yeshua said, live in the world, but need be not of it, meaning we are spiritual beings in a body going through this worldly jungle, this wasteland in a way. And we have to find the castle of good hope, and we have to find the Holy Grail through this wasteland that we're going through. It's not all, I mean, you could be very happy here and be filled with joy. I've always been joyful since the day I'm born. The happiness is in you. If you look for happiness outside, forget it. You either we come into this life with a flame of joy, and it's up to us to keep it burning. And it's kept burning. We're reminded, every church, every mosque, every synagogue, every temple I've gone into of any religion has on the altar have a flame of some kind. Why? To remind us we have the flame. That flame needs tending, we need tending our flame. And that's the flame of joy. So throughout everything we go, we have to remember, and that's what the value of humor and objectivity and awareness is. Know that you're a spiritual being being put through paces from this material world to learn and maybe to teach others. So that's an important lesson that I have learned.
What advice do you have for your children?
Oh, I wrote them
in
all.
case they ever hear this.
I wrote them all notes that I put aside. Well, one is to get as best education you can get. You get it in many ways. You get it by going to school. You get it by staying aware and awake through our life experiences. And you get it by, like Aunt Bunny gets it. She gets it because she's constantly reading and studying various things. So you can learn more than you can learn in any school.
So you're talking to your grandchildren?
Yes,
really? Oh,
by finding your interests and pursuing them. Your basic interests in life will lead you in the right way. And the main thing with kids, and now you're old enough, all of you except the babies, to forget this peer pressure business. It's on a low level. You're an individual soul. You're born with great capacities to do anything you want, to be anything you can envision. You can do it. And it has nothing to do with what your friends do or what they think. Be your own, true to yourself, the way you look, the way you dress, the way you think, the way you educate yourself. Be strong in your individualism and let people copy you. You're all clever, you're all good looking, you all got brains enough. Follow your own inner. That's my message to all my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
So 18 years from now, when Duncan and Draven are 20 years old, what would you want to tell them?
I feel the world will be different then. Who knows? This whole world may shift into another dimension by then. I mean, we don't know the future of Earth. We don't know the future of life. I don't think anybody can predict that far in the future. I would say the same thing that I say to the grandchildren. Just have faith in yourself and don't look for happiness or anything really outside yourself. That's not where it is. It's within. You're like an unread book. You open it up and it's full of all kinds of wisdom, all kinds of knowledge, all kinds of hope. All your instructions you need, you're given at birth, within. We're not sent here as beings with no knowledge, with no... Look at the body. The body knows what to do, how to protect itself, how to digest food, how to breathe. Nobody teaches you that. So just have faith in yourself. That's my lesson.
So how have you made it to 90 years?
Oh, every day I say thank you, universe, or divine energy, for my perfect health, no matter how I feel. Thank you for another day of living and loving. And I just think the power of the mind is the equal of the body. And I think to keep good health, if your body is off, has an emotional shock, a physical shock, it will open you up to diseases. So you have to try to stay balanced. You have to figure it out yourself. Nobody can teach you that. But never forget the power of the mind and eating good food, following the laws of health, getting enough rest. If you're kind to your body will always be kind to you to the end of your days.
And with good thoughts.
I don't know what else you want, because there are certain secrets I'm not going to tell you.
You have secrets? Oh. Why won't you tell us?
Well, too personal.
Ooh. Tune in to the next episode.